culture of the heart is enveloping persuasion and what we like to call co-creating as many things as possible with people. So we get out of telling and getting them involved with the process of having some shape of what the final outcome looks like. What we're trying to do is elevate this, amplify the effect, if you will, to unity. And unity is that not only do we have a similarity, we are of this thing. Okay? It unites us under a banner, a category. If we ask for their opinion, though, if we ask for feedback, whether you realize it or not, you're actually asking them to be a critic, to tear down your idea and concepts. Just ask for their advice. When the cat's away, the mice will play. One of the ways we leverage unity is by co-creating. Automatically, it gets you out of this you versus me, you versus this company scenario, and puts you into the mindset of we. Either you got a house divided or you got a house united. Divided, we fall. United, we stand. Automatically asking for somebody's advice forces them to put themselves into your position, into your shoes. But the paradox of choice is that the more things you have to focus on, the less likely you are to focus on anything.
Welcome to the Culture from the Heart podcast on the From the Heart Business Network. In a business world where employees and customers crave authenticity and trust, hosts Larry Levine and Darrell Amy are on a mission to find and showcase heart-centered executives and the companies they lead. You are about to hear an inspiring conversation with a visionary leader that's bringing heart into the workplace, empowering employees, serving their clients, and uplifting communities, all to create true success. This is Culture from the Heart. The movement starts here. Let's begin.
Welcome to Culture from the Heart. I'm your co-host, Darrell Amy, here today with Larry Levine, and we're joined by Dr. Chris Phelps, CEO of the Cialdini Institute, the home for ethical influence. Dr. Phelps, it's great to have you here.
Thank you, Darrell. Larry, thank you for having me.
No, it's our pleasure. We're going to have a great time here, Darrell.
Yeah, as we get started, the one question we ask every guest on the show is, Chris, what does culture from the heart mean to you?
Culture from the heart. That's a great question. I think too often people don't adapt a culture from any business because they're told what that culture is. And they didn't really have a hand in committing to that culture. We learned as kids that we don't like to be told anything. So when you start getting into telling people to do stuff, it kind of crosses into this realm of influence we call coercion, force, manipulation, or hierarchical authority. Somebody, literally a boss or somebody in charge of you, telling you to do stuff. And what's wrong in that scenario is because you don't really feel like you have a choice in the matter. You don't really have control. When the cat's away, the mice will play, if you've heard that adage, right? So for me, culture from the heart really taps into having a culture that has truly enveloped persuasion into it, because true persuasion by definition is all about giving that person choice, all about them being in control of their situation instead. So kind of two opposite ends of that spectrum, if you think about it that way. So I think to us, a culture of the heart is enveloping persuasion and what we like to call co-creating as many things as possible with people. So we get out of telling and getting them involved with the process of having some shape of what the final outcome looks like. If they do, automatically they're way more committed and consistent with doing that behavior moving forward.
Oh, I really like when I hear this word co-creating. It's one of Darrell and it's one of our favorite words. But as I'm sitting here listening to what you're saying, here's the first thing that's just racing through my head is the increase in employee engagement.
Yes, big time. So I often say it's like I'm going to take the team bowling, if you will. Sure, I got to pick the lane. I don't want me on lane 1 and they're on lane 6. So we're going to be on this lane. Hey, here's the pins. I'll set the pins. But ultimately, let's co-create and let them figure out their own path on how they're going to get this ball down the lane. Make some choices. Is it an 8-pound ball? Is it a 12-pound ball? Is it big holes, small holes? You're going to bowl left-handed, right-handed, granny style? Totally up to you. But give them that sense, co-create along with you. Automatically, they're more committed to the cause.
I love this concept of creating agency on behalf of the people on our team. And I think you're so onto something here, because we say, yeah, this is the culture. These are our values. This is what we're going to do. Any questions, and it's very, and the heart behind it is good. But the idea here is saying, hey, how do we get people involved in co-creating this and maybe also in interpreting it? I mean, what does that look like in real practice?
Well, we have two principles kind of come to mind here. We have the principle of liking, one of Cialdini's principles, which basically states that we like to do business with people we like. So people have a commonality or a similarity to us. So, for instance, your employees, they all work there. That's their connection. That's a similarity, if you will. So there's like involved. But what we're trying to do is elevate this, amplify the effect, if you will, to unity, right? One of our newest principles of persuasion. And unity is that not only do we have a similarity, we are of this thing. Okay. It unites us under a banner, a category of thing. So I just don't want people that have a simple connection that they all work here. I want people that unite by that fact. For instance, Darrell, if I said you and I are from the same hometown, that's a liking, that's a connection, that's a similarity, right? But if I love that town and absolutely associate myself from being from that town, and you couldn't get out of that town fast enough, that's not
right.
unity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we have a culture, if you're not careful, of team members divided, not united. So one of the ways we leverage unity is by co-creating. Automatically, it gets you out of this you versus me, you versus this company scenario, and puts you into the mindset of we. We as this company are doing this stuff together. And if you unite under that concept, then obviously you're now more supportive of it as a result.
Wow.
Walk us through the whole thought process on this, because there's some people who like the likability part of this. I see the unification part of this. What words describe a company that's unified on all fronts?
Well, that's a good question. Relationship focused is huge. Comes to mind. It's hard to say. I mean, it still kind of, to me, falls under that unity. Either you've got a house divided or you got a house united, right? And divided we fall, united we stand.
Yeah.
So what can we do to unite more instead of this just being a job?
So in this co-creation process, how does unity get formed? How does it bubble up out of that? What are some intentional ways that leaders can think about unity inside that process?
Yeah, well, one of the things we always recommend, of course, is using unitizing language whenever possible. So it's not, Darrell, how are you and your team going to get this done? It's, let's spend a moment and brainstorm, how are we going to get this done together? So us, our partnerships, togetherness, using those kind of words go a long way, and letting them know that they are part of something bigger, right? Doing events that unite them, right? Like taking them all bowling, for instance, right? Doing those kind of outings and does build community culture from that aspect, because do unite with each other through shared experiences. Okay. So the more of those we can do, we can unite folks. If you've got people that it's a challenging situation, kind of one of the biggest errors I see people make is, and Dr. Chaldini talks about this a lot, is we tend to ask for people's opinion on things, right? We ask for their feedback, or worst case, we ask for their help. Okay. Well, if we've asked for their help in a matter, then our principle of reciprocity kicks in. Reciprocity states that if someone is given to you, you feel like you've got to give back to them in kind. So if you ask for somebody's help and they give it, you just now created an obligation for yourself to do the same for them, right? So that's one more thing on our to-do list down the road, which I don't think anybody needs or wants. So if we ask for their opinion, though, if we ask for feedback, whether you realize it or not, you're actually asking them to be a critic, to tear down your idea and concepts, rip it to shreds, okay? Which if you're then going to ask them to join up to the cause later, that's not the right mindset you want them to be in, is it? Okay? Instead, what most of the studies are showing, you can change that one little word that can totally change the mindset and the outcome. So instead of asking for help and create an obligation, instead of asking for an opinion or feedback, if you don't want an enemy, if you want somebody united with you, just ask for their advice. Automatically asking for somebody's advice forces them to put themselves into your position, into your shoes. You're now in the same boat together in this mental scenario. And they're automatically, the results they're going to give you, the feedback, and you're still going to get the same feedback and opinions, but they're going to be higher quality now. Okay. More thought involved, more cognitive, rational thought involved, better responses. And because they're in your shoes, you haven't created an enemy. Now, if you've asked them to join the cause, why wouldn't they? You're still in the same boat.
Wow. Well, stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to talk and take a deeper dive into the Cialdini Institute's culture. See you in a moment. Let's be honest, finding the right people and building the right culture, that's the holy grail for every leader.
That's why we recommend Titus Talent, because they don't just fill seats. They help you build teams that thrive.
With their partnership plans, you get more than just hiring help. You get a committed team by your side that helps you attract top performers and retain them.
They bring strategy, data, and a human touch to talent optimization. No guesswork, just results.
So if you're ready to invest in your people and create a culture where everyone wins, head over to culturefromtheheart.com/talent to learn more.
That's culturefromtheheart.com/talent. Your culture is your competitive advantage. Design it with Titus Talent.
Welcome back. Let's pick up where we left off with our friend Dr. Chris Phelps about the culture of the Cialdini Institute. So you guys have developed the gold standard for influence. And I'm just so curious. Many of us had read your books. And if not, you want to read Influence. And we know that this is an amazing model and framework, the research that's been done behind it. But right now, I want to lift the hood on the company itself. Inside the Cialdini Institute, what does the culture look like inside your organization? And as a leader, what are you aiming for?
Yeah, great questions. Well, you mentioned it already. At our core, behind everything that we do and recommend is science. Okay, research study after research study that validates everything that we put out there and recommend to folks. It's not our anecdotal opinion on these things, right? These are just research-based studies on why people do what they do. What's really at the heart of what caused them to make that decision, not the excuses people tend to give us after they've said no to your request, right? Because we'll rationalize anything after it's done, but few really understand what's really behind it, the root source. So research and science-based is definitely one of our core values. Second to that is that we wield a mighty power. Just because you understand how to lead the horse to water, right? You know how to influence it to want to drink, should you? Right? Just because we know how to persuade and influence, should we? Right? So, it is a powerful skill and to have. So ethics is another one of our core values. How do we know that we're objectively on the ethical side of the line? And so that we can help others also know that they're objectively on the ethical side of the line, so that they can feel confident when they find themselves in a situation with others and there are one or more of the principles present. They don't have to feel embarrassed. Sometimes society tells us, has brainwashed us, that we shouldn't tap into these things, right? Now they can be objectively confident to go, no, I should. And I should bring these things up to the surface and tap into them and persuade this person down this path, ultimately for the betterment of us and them in the process. So ethics is a big one for us outside of the science. Co-creation, we mentioned that one, is huge. So making sure that this is not a top level down dictated thing. This is, we're bowling, right? Here's the pins. How are we going to get there? Okay. Should we change the pin? So everything's open to negotiation, if you will, because we want to constantly strive and find out, hey, number one, what does our target market want? And make sure we're building products and services around that, and then leverage our team's talents to help us create those things. So we're not constantly forced to do that from the top level down. It just doesn't work as well. So co-creating with our own team members is a big component of our core values. And then the last thing, of course, is efficiency, meaning helping people become more efficient in their communication process. Streamlining everything, because as you probably imagine, that technology has made many things in our life simplified. Like even this podcast, like even the technology behind it now, we couldn't have done that 10 years ago, right? It's amazing what's available to us and how AI is accelerating that technology platform for us, making things more simple. But in simplifying those things, it's also created a whole new world of complexity in everybody's life. It's actually, while we've never been more connected in theory to everybody across the world, we've also never been more isolated from people than we are right now. So it's dividing people as well. So I think with our efficiency, what we mean by that is we're simplifying this curve of communication so that because nobody has time anymore, they're distracted by 1,000 things because of the complexity technology has created for them. Well, we can help them cut through that noise and say what they need to say in a faster amount of time, in a way more efficient period of time, and a more effective way as well, right? To really get to the heart of it. So we're not wasting anyone's time, effort, or energy in this process. So I think efficiency, because nobody has time, is even more apparent and it's only going to get more important as time goes on.
You know what I like about this? I have to zero in on this communication because I see all too often, and I'm sure you see it as well, as ineffective communication. And when I'm sitting here thinking about building culture and all that is, I just don't think we as leaders do enough to coach, nurture, guide, facilitate, whatever words you want to use around it, what effective communication looks like inside their company.
Oh, yeah. Well, just simple things you wouldn't think about, right? So as I always say, you can lead people down the path to yes and what you're presenting to them, questions you're framing in front of them. But if you're not careful, you can also be walking them down the path to no. And if you're walking them down the path to no, automatically more resistance, more barriers, more friction, and you waste more time trying to climb out of that hole you just dug for yourself. Mm-hmm. And in fact, you don't have to do that. I mean, so not only what we say to people is important, but often the order in which we say it can have even more of an impact on your communication style and their response. So example I always give people, you got good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear? Is a choice we often frame for people. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, if we would like one of those two options to be presented and valued in a different way, then you have to control that sequence. Because what the brain hears first totally changes its perception and value on what comes next. So if I say the good news is this, holy crap, the bad news is this. And if I flip it, the exact opposite's true. Well, the bad news is this, but the good news is that. Suddenly the good news sounds a whole lot better. Mm-hmm. So imagine if you got that sequence wrong and you said, well, the good news is this, but the bad news is that. And suddenly everybody's throwing up barriers like, well, crap, we're not doing that. Well, yeah, wait, no, we need to though. You see the hole you just create for yourself?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So you got to be careful. Oftentimes, as I said, that sequence is important. But if we can simplify that, if they can strategically know the sequence of things, then automatically you avoid more landmines along the way.
When you think about the culture inside your organization, what are some things that you do to reinforce those values and are doing on an ongoing basis to build the culture?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we revisit them every time we get together. That's important. Mm-hmm. We got to keep them simple, right? So, the paradox of choice is that the more things you have to focus on, the less likely you are to focus on any of them. Mm-hmm. So, when I hear a company says, hey, we have 10 core values,
right,
that absolutely no one remembers.
Right.
Unless their job depended on it, right? So, 3 to no more than 5, right, that you can reinforce. They're presented, they're shown everywhere. So you can constantly remind people of what these are. And then the daily not really the daily check-in, but at least once a year is one of our annual meetings. It's like, hey, do these still make sense for us in the coming year? Which of these are we keeping? What do we need to modify moving forward? And so again, I can still get them in part of the process and recommitted to those core values. And it may be that we keep them, but now they chose to keep them, which means that's who they are now. Right.
Beautiful. Well, a big thank you to our sponsors for making this show possible. Stick around. We'll be back in just a moment.
If you were buying a company, you wouldn't just glance at the website and say, looks good, let's buy it. You'd do your due diligence. You'd review the books, check the leadership, dig into performance history.
Exactly. You never spend millions on a company without knowing what you're getting. Yet, most CEOs hire salespeople with nothing more than a resume and a gut feeling.
That's why we recommend Sales Index Unlimited Candidate Assessments. It's like due diligence for your sales hires. Each sales candidate is evaluated across 21 core sales competencies because a crucial role like sales requires more than a personality profile. Sales Index compares candidates against a database of 2.5 million salespeople. You'll know exactly who has the drive, the grit, and the skills to perform before you bring them on board.
Because in sales, a bad hire doesn't just cost salary. It costs momentum, margin, and morale.
For just $299 a month, you can protect your growth engine and make every sales hire a smart investment.
Do your due diligence before your next hire.
Go to unlimited.salesindex.ai. That's unlimited.salesindex.ai and hire with confidence. Thank you for listening to that quick break. Let's get back to the heart of today's episode. Dr. Phelps, so many leaders are listening in. And earlier you said, hey, when the cat's away, the mice will play. I think that's every leader's core fear. You talked about ways to get buy-in and influence the organization. What advice would you give to leaders who are listening in saying, hey, I've got a vision for the culture. I don't feel like my people are getting it yet. What advice would you give them?
Yeah. So this resonates with me because in my own businesses, before I learned about Cialdini, this is where I struggled as well in multiple areas. And what I realized after hearing Cialdini do a keynote address at a business conference I was at, that the root cause behind the behavior problems of my customers, my team, and some of the other executives that worked for me was that I wasn't getting a commitment out of any of them to do anything. Not really. So no wonder when the cat was away, the mice would play. So I realized that if I could change that, if I could start getting better commitments out of people, then I should see a change in their behavior, right? And that's exactly what happens. When they commit, people tend to do, and they tend to do it consistently. That's now who they are in that moment. Even if they didn't believe it before they committed. Once the commitment's made, that's now who they are. So it comes from getting better commitments out of folks. And one of the most powerful ones you can get, especially in a team organization kind of setting, is the power of a public commitment. Right. So getting your team to not only be involved in co-creating this process, but then reporting back to others in the group what their specific responsibility and commitment is in helping us get to this goal or whatever it is, put this thing into action. And everybody hears this public commitment. And then you're going to have a reminder of that commitment, meaning, all right, well, we're going to meet back in a couple of weeks and we're going to see where we're all at. And we'll see where you're at, Darrell, with your commitment. Larry, where are you at with your commitment? Okay. There was a big study in my own alma mater, UNC Chapel Hill, and they did this with students. And when there wasn't much of a commitment, maybe 14% of the kids were able to get their grades up 1 grade on average. Okay. And these are kids that pretty much had to, or they were going to flunk out of school. So they were already kind of motivated, and still it didn't get very many people to move. When they had a plan in their mind, very few got their grades up. But as soon as they shared that plan with 3 other strangers, and they met back with them the next semester to see how they did, over 86% of them got their grades up 1 grade on average. So when everybody knows you said you were going to do something and we're going to meet back to talk about it, that accountability piece, that's a powerful commitment that more people move.
Hey, I like this. Can you give us examples of what commitment language looks like?
Yeah. So simple one, at a restaurant, right? Popular restaurant in Chicago. And they were having a problem with no-shows on reservations. So 30% of the people that made a restaurant at this place did not show up. Now, this was an authority place. They'd won awards, had a lot of social proof, big, pictures of people always crowded, okay, busy on the weekends, whatever. 30% no-shows on reservations. Well, they ended the call with a statement. After a reservation was made, it'd be like, all right, Larry, please call us if you can't make your reservation. Okay, thanks. Click. Well, all they did was change that to a simple commitment question. Hey, before you go, Larry, will you please call us if you can't make this reservation? We'll wait for you to say yes. That one commitment question, we call an active verbal commitment, dropped the no-show rate from 30% to 10.
Wow.
One question, right? So instead of giving statements to people, ask for commitment questions instead. Automatically, if they answer yes, which you hope they will, they're more committed.
What other advice would you give to leaders who are listening and want to implement this in their organization?
I mean, the biggest advice I always give people is you have to really understand the science behind why people say no, right? You can't influence those to say yes unless you truly understand the root causes behind no. And 9 times out of 10, it is not the excuse you're hearing from your customers or your people, okay? It's not the price. It's not the whatever. Okay? There's these other things that research show us. So you got to get to the heart of understanding why people say no to you. Are they even in the right mindset to hear what you have to say today? Because if they're not, because everybody's coming into a situation with a mindset already established, if that mindset isn't focused on what they value about your conversation, their current mindset is distracting them from what you want to talk about, or sadly, directly competing with what you want to talk about. And either way, the door to yes is already shut. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You have a hard chance to get the door open, unless it's a top of mind pain situation for them. But unless it's like painful today, whatever that means to them, you're not getting a yes. So that's an example of even mindsets can throw people into the no, right? So really understand the science. And there's really 5 main things that we teach on, that we get to the core values of what people are using when they decide no. And then, of course, we'll show you the principles on how to counter those, because once you understand no, now you can break down how to overcome it. What are the obstacles to influence on top of that?
This is good stuff. And it's so interesting because a lot of times, many of us run away from no.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's human nature, right?
Yeah, of course.
We learned as kids when we were tiny that the word we feared and hated the most was no. Because our parents kept telling us at every turn, every time you do something, no, no, no. So nobody likes to hear no. But at the same time, it's interesting because of that, people actually hate telling others no.
Mm-hmm.
There's ways you can actually influence around that as a result.
So beautiful. Well, thank you so much for giving us a window, not only into your organization, but also into your heart as a leader. This has been a really fantastic conversation. Really, really appreciate you, Dr. Phelps.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
This is great. Our pleasure as well.
So good. What an amazing conversation. And just to think about, this idea of every leader wants to operationalize their culture. We got we got vision, we got values, and so many leaders struggle to actually see those come to life. And what Dr. Phelps has shared with us today, I think contains the seeds of some very powerful concepts in making sure your culture actually does come to life.
Inside the word powerful, I think of empowerment, Darrell, and this is actually creating a unified, empowered culture.
That's right. Well, hey, thank you for joining us today. Make sure to get the Leader's Guide. Did you know that every week there is a Leader's Guide with an outline of what we talked about today and great discussion points that you can use with your team? Just go to culturefromtheheart.com and click on the Leader's Guide. We'd love to send it to you. Well, thank you for joining us this week. We believe that culture is the heartbeat of every organization. And as Dr. Phelps has reminded us, it's about co-creation and commitment. Thank you for joining us on this episode today. Until next time, lead with your heart and watch your culture thrive.
Thank you for joining us on this journey to discover heart-centered leaders shaping extraordinary company cultures. To access a leader guide with notes from this week's episode, simply click the link in the show notes or visit us at www.culturefromtheheart.com. Do you know a CEO who's built a culture from the heart? We'd love to hear their story. Head over to www.culturefromtheheart.com and click the Nominate Your CEO button. Until next time, remember, great cultures start with the heart.